Good evening to everyone. We are on our last episode of the Newark Ed Talks. I am your guest, Ali McBride, and the Newark NAACP is hosting a series of Newark Ed Talks to educate the public on the role of the Newark Board of Education. The topics include, of course, education policy, budget and finance, governance, and leadership, as well as community engagement. Monday's Ed Talk will focus on governance and leadership. Well, today's Ed Talk was focused on governance and leadership, where only 2.87% of Newark's registered voters turned out to vote in the Newark Board of Education election 2022. I'm going to say that one more time for emphasis. Only 2.87% of Newark's registered voters turned out to vote in the Newark Board of Education in 2022. The Newark NAACP is leading a Get Out the Vote campaign to help increase awareness of the election, educate residents of the role of the board, and motivate residents to vote on April the 25th, which is tomorrow. We look to achieve these goals by taking our message directly to the doors of Newark residents. So what we're trying to achieve with the Newark Ed Talks, our intention is to have a conversation that will be prompted by questions. The level of conversation is from the point of someone who does not know anything about the Board of Education. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the first volley of questions, but we're going to read our guests' bios to give you some information of who we have. Our first guest is Mary G. Bennett. Ms. Bennett is an educator. Her entire career has provided a myriad of experiences for her to work, serve, and hone her skills in this field. From beginning her career as an English teacher at Barringer High School, Go Blue Bears, to becoming a vice principal at her alma mater, Westside High School, working as Central Office Program Director, the High School Professional Development, and being appointed as the first female principal of Southside Malcolm X Shabazz High School. Her career continued after she retired from the Newark Board of Education and brought to include working for the U.S. Department of Education on a project in South Africa, teaching at Fordham University, and becoming a member of the facilitation team launching Gear Up around the country to advance awareness and preparation for college underserved minority students K-8 through high school. When Project Grad Newark was created, she was the principal of the first grad high school. Later, she returned to become the executive director of Project Grad Newark that included Central High School and all the elementary schools that fed into Central and Shabazz. This program provided professional development for staff training for parents and families, summer institutes on 10 colleges and universities for high school students, and Lucent Technology funded scholarships for students pursuing college degrees after they graduated from high school. Mary Bennett also was recruited by Seton Hall University to work in the Department of Urban Transformation, mentoring new principals in Jersey City and providing consulting services in Jersey City, Perth Amboy, Patterson, for Montclair State for students studying to become teachers more than 15 years ago. This is work she is passionate about and continues to do today. In addition, she currently serves as consultant to the Newark Public Schools, working on facilities projects that advance the 10-year strategic plan. Our next guest, Donald Jackson, is a community advocate for the past 20 years. He began to publicly advocate during his high school years and worked with multiple labor unions to support employee rights. He began a career in social work and transitioned into law enforcement. Elected to the Newark Public Schools Advisory Board in the year 2014. And during his tenure with the board and with the district, they made excellent strides and progress to bring local control back to the school board. Welcome, 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 guests. How are you both feeling?
Beautiful. Nice to be here.
Good, good, good. This is going to be conversational, so we're gonna take it easy. We're gonna answer the question to our best of our ability, but we're gonna try not to be too technical because we want the general population, the public, to understand what's going on. Because I've learned so much just doing these series. I've done 3 prior to the one today, And I'm really learning a lot, and I'm more than sure that those that are taking the time out are learning just as much as I am. So I'll go into the first question, and I'll give the question to you, Ms. Bennett, and then you can follow up, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Bennett, the first question is, what is the role of the Newark Board of Education as it relates to their relationship with schools and parents?
So I think the primary relationship is for board members to be informed. They need to know the existing policies and work with their fellow board members, setting policies and developing clear directions that comply with state laws and moves the education of the students and their families forward. Board members need to work on what is needed to best serve students, not the how. That's how they hire the superintendent and then stay on him, as it turns at this point to a male, to make sure that the follow through is occurring. Board members need to collaborate. They need to work together. There are 9 members of that board, and they need to work together so that they can put forth their agenda and get the 5 people lined up, pushing forward, working on behalf of the children in the district.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Mr. Jackson, how do you answer that question?
For one, thank you for having me. I feel honored to be here and to give some of my knowledge that I received from my elders. Ms. Bennett, I've known.
Thanks for your service too. You work law
Thank you.
enforcement. I'm retired law enforcement, so definitely thank you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And there's not too much for me to add with Ms. Bennett. Ms. Bennett, definitely hit the nail right on the head. As a board member, we govern through effective policy. We can definitely be visible in schools, visible during community functions, but the ultimate goal of the board is to govern through effective policy. And like Ms. Bennett said, if we're not knowledgeable on policy and state law that's applicable to that policy, we're already at a disadvantage. So just having that knowledge and that understanding is basically the core function of your school board.
Got you. You know what, before we go to the next question, which I'll volunteer you, Mr. Jackson, because you served in the board during one term before going into law enforcement, what might have been some of the things that actually goes against the question? What were some of the difficulties? I'm not asking you to any dirty laundry, just some of the things that could have probably been difficult due to the dynamics of the position that you were in, and working with the schools and with the parents. What were some of the difficulties?
So I'm not exactly too sure what your question is. What was the difficulties with working with?
Well, as you know, they say, the role of the Newark Board is as it relates with the relationship of the schools and the parents. And
Okay.
Right, because we know that it's going to, when you think parents and schools, it's going to be some pushbacks, and to add a Molotov cocktail,
right?
We're looking at what direction that the board is going to go into.
So what I'll explain is this. As a board member, you do have the right to be an advocate and a champion for parents and families. But the ultimate challenge is, and basically why these forms are occurring is because a lot of families don't understand what a board member is and what their role is. Because I was also an advocate. I still am an advocate, and a lot of my elders remember me for going to the meetings and yelling and fight the power. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But once you're elected, you swear to office, you swear an oath. And you have to act in due diligence, because for one, you're ethically and legally obligated to do so.
Right.
And I'll say that to say this. We would get calls about, issues at schools and families. And if I have my activist hat on, I'm ready to run over there, yell, holler, chain the doors, and fight the power. Now I have to put my board member hat on.
Right.
did this with a particular incident, and there's numerous, but with a particular incident, I would have to remind families, okay, did you escalate? Did you go to your school guidance counselor? Did you go to your vice principal? Did you go to
Say
your
it.
principal? Who did you
Say
speak
it.
to at central office?
Right.
We as board members, and this is, and not to talk bad about people, but we just have to be honest. Some people don't understand, and even some board members, we legally cannot interfere with the day-to-day operations of a school
Right.
district.
That's right.
And doing so, we are, not in compliance with our policy, and we're not in compliance with the law.
That's
That
right.
in turn can hurt the district. The district is now liable because you represent the district. And, and it's happened times before. And, even with some incidents that I've been involved with, well, this board member said to come here and do this. And it causes a lot of friction, because at the end of the day, again, we govern through effective policy.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you said that, because primarily that runs the gamut in pretty much everything that we do for the most part. Even in the and that's like, I'm smiling here because I'm like, wow, even the job that we do with the NAACP, we're nonpartisan. We're nonpartisan. So when people say, well, you're not doing this for that person, you're not doing that. No, you have to stay in the middle. You have to stay in the middle. You have your hand up, Ms. Bennett. You must want to add something. You can add something.
I totally agree. Donald is right. The code of ethics, when you take the oath of office to become a board member, you then are governed by the code of ethics, which is in law for New Jersey. So you can't respond emotionally without jeopardizing the good work you want to do and trying to help somebody who has an issue. If you go off the rails, you jeopardize your role on the board, and you also put the person that you're trying to help in a position where they don't understand. They still have to go through process. No matter how they may feel they've been treated unjustly, they still have to go through process. That is why the Board of Education is responsible for the policies that set the what, not the how.
Absolutely. Our second question is to Mr. Jackson. How do members of the board influence plans and policies in the Newark district?
So, and please pardon me, because it's been a while, and
Take your
my
time.
memory kind of a couple of gray spaces in there. But so you have what are called committees. During my tenure, I was a part of the facilities committee, which coincides with building engineering or facilities. The names have changed over the years. Security, that falls under facilities. You have program and instruction, which falls under curriculum, extracurricular activities. You have legal, which is all of the legal matters. You have finance. I believe you have community engagement now, and I might be missing one or two other committees. So how it works is, let's go with a month. Let's say January. So the first week of January, you'll have your committee meetings where you'll meet with your assistant superintendent, your department heads. They'll come in and they'll say, this is what we're proposing for the agenda, or this is an update on this project, or this is an update on this program that we're running. And also, again, we're voting for your choice of representation. Kind of a sidebar, not to get too off track, but think of your board members as your legislative body for your school district.
Mhm.
So what'll happen is you'll have your board member in the meetings, committee meetings, asking questions. What's the cost? Because again, as an advocate and as a community activist, I hate to think of the word business, but as a board member, this is a business.
That's right.
We have to make sure that we are, again, in line with state law and in line with budget, because we have policies and procedures that we have to follow. Then we're going to ask, who's going to head the project, how long are things going to take, to sharpen the spec. I'll deal with program and instruction. That was my committee for my first year. So there was a ESL, English second language, ESLA curriculum that was just coming down, and the assistant superintendent and a couple of teachers came to the forum or our committee meeting to express a new book voucher that the district had acquired. And it was basically a new breakdown of curriculum and what they have worked on and how they were going to implement it in the new schools. And basically it's just teaching us what was proposed, what they wanted to put into policy. So we will go back and ask questions. Is it aligned with existing policies? Does it go against any existing policies? What does it change? Then we have to make sure we're in line with 18A, which is our education law, 18A and Title 6A, I believe. Just being in law enforcement, I learned there are numerous laws. You got real estate law, criminal law, educational law, administrative law, and all of that plays a part in it. So those that's what happens in your first week. The next week you'll have the business meeting, where committees will report out to the general public and other board members as to what was discussed. Usually there's not too much action that takes place at the business meeting. The business meeting is just simply where we iron out the kinks of the monthly agenda to vote, to take the action at the business meet, the general meeting. Community members sign up and ask questions and give feedback as it relates to not only what we're discussing in the business meeting, but other issues that happens. Then next you'll have your general meeting where we'll take the action. So at that general meeting, after we reported out what we talked about in committee, we're now going to move forward. We'll put it for a vote. Does the board, at that time, unfortunately, even though we had governance and we had program and instruction, the superintendent could still have the final say because we were still advisors. So if the superintendent didn't agree with what we voted on, which happened plenty of times and more instances than I can remember, and there were a lot of hot items, the superintendent can say the board voted against it. However, we're moving forward. But at the once that had taken place, maybe they would move on with if it was in good favor, we would move forward. And the breakdown of the new implementation of the curriculum will begin.
Absolutely, got you. Is there anything you want to add to that, Ms. Bennett?
Yes, I feel very strongly that board members need to read. They signed up for 3 years of reading, and annotating and preparing questions. They do not need to come to business meetings. They do not need to come to community meetings without having read the packet. The packet should be sent to them in a timely manner. And although we do a lot of things electronically, if there's a board member who needs hard copy, he or she should be provided with the hard copy. They need to read so that they know what is being presented. They need to ask questions, and they don't need to feel like they're attacking. You don't have to attack. If you have a question, you need an answer. And on behalf of the superintendent and his staff, you should be able to get that answer. You are representing the public. You're representing 38,000 children who are not at the table. They're counting on the 9 people at the table to do the right thing. And that's not to suggest that the superintendent or his staff is trying to do the wrong thing, but people need to be clear. Donald just walked us through an entire process that he learned about and grew to work through in his 3-year tenure on the board. That doesn't happen overnight. And if you're not committing to the due diligence of reading, thinking, asking questions, then you don't need to be there. When something is presented and a vote is requested to approve it, it needs to be clear what it is, how it ties to existing policy and programs, what are the deliverables, how is it going to be reported out, and people need to have that information before the vote. So I really believe that the reading and the time you put in, never mind you volunteered, you knew that when you were signing up, you're giving up your time, and time is valuable, but if you don't read, and if you don't prepare questions, and if you don't probe, then you're just a rubber stamp. Our children and our families need better
Absolutely.
than that.
Absolutely. And I think that that's why it's crucial. I mean, you know, elections tomorrow, but that's why it was so crucial. And that's why we put on these ed talks so people could understand and make a judgment about who you are going to elect to these positions. Are they qualified? Do you think that they're going to do the work? You know, is this something for someone's resume? You know, a stepping stone, because you know that's what a lot of people do. They'll run for these positions because they think that it will prompt them to be able to run for another elected position. And we have to be critical. But we have people going in here to rule on things uh, where you have a budget of $1.3 billion. So, Ms. Bennett, you know, we just learned, we didn't just learn, but I keep referring to it. We learned in the budget and finance ed talk that a portion of the budget gets allocated to charter schools in Newark.
Mhm.
Do Newark Board of Education members have an influence on any of the policies in those schools?
No. The Charter Law of 1995 creates a clear, distinct operation. Those students, the 20,000 students roughly who are in charter schools in the city of Newark, are Newark students, and their money follows them. So their money follows them into the charter operation. Now, the charter schools are responsible for their students taking the state assessments. They're responsible for being monitored for their attendance. But beyond that, the Newark Board of Education has no influence. Their money flows through the business administrator's office. And I know you had Ms. Wilson on last week, and she explained over $300 million of our $1.3 billion goes straight to the charter students through their enrollment in those schools. We do not dictate who they hire, how they hire. We do not dictate their curriculum. We do not dictate their policies. Their policies should be aligned with state legislation and those guidelines. But no, because they live under the Newark Public School rubric umbrella, that's how they get their money. The money follows the child. So we do not control them. We do not tell them how to pay their teachers, how much to pay their teachers, extracurricular compensation. No, we do not. If a child comes back to the district from a charter school, the district gets a credit for the portion of the year that the child is back. They don't get money back. They get a credit toward the upcoming school year. So we do not control them, but they do get over $300 million because of the 20,000 proximate students that are in their operations.
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, and just to piggy back off that, you know, in my most humble opinion, the same oversight and the same stringent red tape that applies to public school needs to apply to charter schools. And I don't want to get into the politics of charter versus public, but I will say this. I have been privy to a lot of incidences in different charter schools throughout the city in which state intervention needed to come along, well overdue. Again, charter schools are privately run. You know, you get into this, again, this political debate about public charter. At the end of the day, they have they are a separate entities from us, but they do have to follow state law. And in some instances, they have not been aligned. Now, you know, no public schools district, we've had some areas where we've, you know, fallen short and those sort of things. And the state has, stepped in, criticized, for lack of a better word. And that same effort needs to go to the charter schools. Who's enforcing the certification of teachers and staff inside charter schools? You know, who's making sure the charter school districts are aligned with state discipline regulations? Because, you know, some schools I hear kids getting suspended 5-7 days, 2 weeks that's excessive. That's unlawful, you know. So, you know, that's just my take on it. But I never really fell into that debate, only because there was a lot of work that needed to be done at home. And the politics around that was just a lot, unfortunately, and still
Gotcha.
is to this day. It affects the district negatively.
I'm more than sure. I'm more than sure. Just to follow up to that, Mr. Jackson, what steps should board members take to ensure that the superintendent is accountable to the board and the community?
So just in short, board members have to remember their purpose. And it was talked about in terms of volunteering, and Ms. Bennett hit it right on the head. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of sacrifice of time. But again, this is what we signed up for.
Right.
And I say that to say this. We have to stop allowing personal feelings, personal connections. Because I've known this person for 30 years, I'm not going to give him a hard time like I would give somebody new. That's right. Not why we're in the seat. And if that's the case, you need to leave. I particularly myself, I can only speak for Donald Jackson. I'm going to hold you accountable as if I will hold a stranger, or as anyone I know for that matter. And right. Because at the end of the day, it's not about my personal feelings. It's about moving a district, the largest public school district in the state of New Jersey, forward. So that's going to require asking hard questions. That's going to require us holding the superintendent accountable for what's in his contract, his or her contract. That's going to require us to review. The board put certain stipulations in the contract for the superintendent. Has the superintendent reached these benchmarks? Just like you would with a private company. Do you think PSNG or Prudential will rehire their CEO if he's not meeting certain benchmarks? The board members wouldn't allow that.
Right.
Nor should we, and this has nothing to do with personal feelings. And the fact that the power, whoever decided this was a great idea, the power to give someone complete autonomy, is just, unfathomable, particularly for us to have been in state control for so long, to give that up now, and pardon me for going off on that tangent there. But at the end of the day, we are the legislative body. We are there to make sure that we have the checks and balance. Again, this has absolutely nothing to do with personality or friendships, but you have to answer the hard questions. You have to ask you have to be critical. You have to critique. And the reason why is because, it's just too much at stake. We've come too far now to give up everything and to digress. I do understand we've come out of global pandemic, which shook the entire world. But we can't keep holding that as an excuse either. Some of the things I've heard is just unfathomable, coming from people I've known practically my whole entire life. So to answer that, it's just about accountability. You have benchmarks set up in your contract, or you have benchmarks set up where we should be 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year. Here we are at the end, and we haven't even made 30%, 20%, or 10% progress. That's an issue. It's a cause for concern. And the Friends and Family Benefits Plan has to come to an end.
Got you. Ms. Bennett, should community members bring grievances and praise points? No, I'm sorry. Is anything you want to add to that, Ms. Bennett?
No, I think that Donald covered it very clearly. And I think that families and community members are going to go to board members with concerns. I think what's important for board members to understand is they were elected by the community. They should listen, but then they should proceed to pass it on to the superintendent and his folks and stay with the issue. Don't pass it on and walk away. Don't try to solve it yourself. This is the issue that came to Mary Bennett. This is the issue that came to Donald Jackson. Superintendent, I need you to look into this. I need to hear from you, 24 hours, 48 hours, where this stands. I'm going to stay with this issue for this family, but I'm relying on you to actually handle the issue and keep me informed. Again, the code of conduct, the ethical behavior, board members, and sometimes it's difficult because people come to you with really heart-wrenching concerns.
Right.
This isn't happening, that isn't happening, this was done to my child, blah, blah, blah. Not dismissing any of that. So board members are going to be approached. You're elected by the community. Why shouldn't the community approach you? But
That's
once
right.
the problem comes to you, then you've got to be a good listener. You've got to pass it on, but stay with it. You stay with it until the superintendent can tell you, these are the steps we've taken, this is what we've done, and Miss So-and-so, such and such. Now you can double back to Miss So-and-so because she called you.
Right.
She reached out to you. There's nothing unethical in you speaking with her. You didn't offer a solution. You didn't tell her you were going to handle it. You told her, I will look into it and you'll be hearing from someone and I'll get back to you. The code of conduct is so important to be followed, but it is hard because you come from the community, you know people, but we have a person that you, the board members, hired. You have one employee as a board member, and that's the superintendent of the school district. He or she is your employee. That's the head person. And that's the person you go through all the policies and procedures that you have to support the community to get resolution, and stay with the issue. Don't turn it over and turn away. Stay with the issue so that you know you stayed with it, and you can say to people, this is what you brought to me. I'm staying with it. They're working on it. So people don't feel like, yeah, you got elected and now you don't care. That's not what you want. You want to be transparent and don't tell people, I'm going to fix this for you. It's going to be okay. Now you tell them, I'm going to look into it for you and I'm going to stay with you while it tries to be resolved. And I think that that's what good board members do. They read, they listen, they take notes. Don't depend on everything off the top of your head. And when you need to go back to it, you have some notes to go back to. And then when you go to the superintendent and ask him, in this instance, Roger Leone, to look into it, you know the day, the time you asked, you know the information you gave, and then you give him the opportunity to work on it. He's got 5,000 plus employees to work on it. So we need to give him the opportunity and hold him accountable to do likewise. And then you can get back to the community. So I think that the board members need to do their due diligence in being good readers, good listeners, good question askers, good note takers, and then communicate. There's no battle that should be going on between the board and the superintendent because they hired him. They get to evaluate him. So in that evaluation, what's the criteria? The New Jersey School Boards has a whole process that they train and walk you through in terms of evaluating your superintendent. That's the person you put in the job. You got to work with him. You may not take him home for dinner, but you got to work with him and give him the opportunity and hold yourself accountable for doing your part.
Got you. We're making pretty good on time. Hopefully we won't have to skip a question. We got about maybe a little less than, we got a little less than 10 minutes. And I'll shoot you this question, Ms. Bennett. Should community members bring grievances? No, did we go through that? No. What does an exemplary board member look like? We'll go there.
In my opinion, an exemplary board member is male or female. That is a person who knows they have signed up to work hard for no pay for 3 years. And they need to commit the time that it's going to take to give the due diligence to the job. They need to be visible. They need to be listening to people. They need to be asking questions. They need to be concerned when they get last minute requests to approve something. You know, did it need to be a last minute request, or should they have had it ahead of time? How do things fit together? A Board of Education of the size of Newark is a huge puzzle. And you know, if you've ever put together a puzzle, there are a lot of pieces. But if you put it together well, you wind up with a picture that makes sense. And we are the largest school district, as Donald says, in the state of New Jersey. And our puzzle is constantly changing because we have a lot of moving parts. We have people who are constantly moving into the city, out of the city, in public schools, in charter schools, coming back to public schools. So the board members need to be ready to sign up to work hard and work smart and strategize. You have a 9-member board. You need 5 votes to get what you're trying to get approved. They need to know how to work their strategy. They need to be talking about what needs to happen. And when it's time for a vote, they need to see if they've got 5 people standing on the same side of the issue, based on fact, not based on feeling and emotion, based on fact.
Got you. Mr. Jackson, your position on that, on what does an exemplary board member look like?
Again, Ms. Bennett,
Cheered on the head.
I mean, yeah, just to add, from personal experience, you do sacrifice a lot of personal time, but I did that as an advocate, and I did that for free. So, I will say this: I would never give up the opportunity once presented with it again. It was a great time. It was a stressful time. We during the 2014, 2017 years, we were definitely in some turmoil. A lot of vacations went to the wayside. A lot of barbecues. Even though summertime is slow, that 14-15 school year, Newark and Rose was just getting pushed out, and that took up a lot of personal time. And I'm not gonna call myself the best board member. I was not perfect. During that time, we had Mr. Lewis, Ariana Perillo, Daniqua Matthias, and Dr. McCreary. There were a lot of us who sacrificed that summer to help family, because it was just a lot of unknown. And to Ms. Bennett's point about ethics, I could remember people pulling me to the side, because again, they've known me all my life, and said, Donald, I want you to do this. I need this done for my kid. Stop. I'm learning the process as you're learning it, and we're gonna work through it together. But what people are expecting and wanted at that time just could not happen through a legality standpoint. So like Ms. Bennett said, it does not happen overnight, and I'm sure a lot of people thought once I got on the board that the energy of shutting down meetings, screaming and hollering, and they thought that was going to be the platform. And my first meeting, I said, I need to sit back, take in, and understand what's going on. Because you didn't put me here to be the loudest one in the room, but you put me here to accomplish something. And there were some times where less was needed to be said publicly, but more was needed to be done during committee. So again, it was definitely a learning experience. I was humbled by it, and that's what is needed in the board member.
Got you. I want to throw something out before I go to the last question. I might even be able to entertain a question before that, because I was told that I can give about maybe 5 more minutes, because we have 2 people on the panel as opposed to the one that we usually have. So I've talked to a few parents that have students at Arts High School, right? And we know that they have a particular criteria in order to get into the high school, because I guess it's one of our specialized schools here in Newark. So I'll ask you, Mr. Jackson, how would you deal with if a parent's child got accepted into Arts High School, and now this year it's something new where they have this whole interviewing process, and someone's child wasn't accepted after they've received a letter saying that they were accepted, now you have this new criteria of being interviewed. Now all of a sudden, this child is not being accepted. And so the mother or father is taking the proper precautions and going about it in the way that she feels she needs to. And she's getting some resistance from those inside of the school system. How should that parent go about that?
Well, just from listening to the question, I think one of the first problems would be is if you got in a letter saying that you were already accepted, now there's something totally different or a different way of enrollment, and now that child is no longer accepted, that kind of in and of itself is a problem there, because that doesn't even sound like that's aligned with policy.
Right.
So what I would recommend is, again, as I said, escalate it. Go back to the source. Why wasn't my child admitted? We have to have a reason. What was the criteria in which the child was not accepted?
Right.
Did they not meet all the benchmarks? Because again, just hearing I'm accepted, now I'm not accepted, that's an issue. If it was an error, what was the error?
Right. Then a new
and
process
then
altogether, an interviewing process that has never been implemented at any other time during the history of Arts High School. This new process is being implemented. So that also adds, a whole other dynamic as well, because this is the first time they've ever done that.
Absolutely. That's the first time me hearing this. So that I would definitely speak to assistant superintendent at that point and figure
Absolutely.
out what was the criteria, why wasn't the child accepted, and now what is the alternative?
Right.
Because we have to provide a school for this child.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Ms. Bennett, do you have something you want to add to that?
Well, I know that Dr. Ortiz is the assistant superintendent in charge of the high schools. I know Ms. Denos is the principal of Arts High School, and I agree with Donald. I'm going to be the parent, and I'm starting with the letter of acceptance. I have in hand a letter of acceptance, so that's where my child is supposed to be come September 2023. So I'm going to go step by step, unrelenting, how an acceptance turned into now a denial or a rejection. Somebody dropped the ball somewhere.
Yes.
First letter should not have gone out if the criteria was going to change. And if that indeed is what happens, as Donald said, you have to escalate and stay with it. Escalate and stay with it, because you have, based on what you put forth, Ali, a letter of acceptance.
Yes.
So there shouldn't be a letter canceling out an acceptance. We're still in the same school year. School year's not over. There's almost 8 more weeks to go. So what happened between the letter of acceptance and now my child isn't going? No, I wouldn't stop. But again, I would escalate and stay with it. Don't get frustrated. This parent, this is her child, his child. Stay with it. Get resolution, because something has happened that should not have happened. There should not be a letter of acceptance that is now a letter of rejection. No.
I agree. And
can I just I just want to ask this quick question, and to piggyback off Ms. Bennett, and I'm glad Ms. Bennett stepped in, because again, my brain sometimes it works slow, but now the horsepower is kicking. Just in between that time frame, what policy changed? Who decided to change the policy?
Right.
Because that sounds like something somebody just woke up with and said, you know what, I'm gonna do this way, and it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on.
And the parents,
what policy changed?
Absolutely, and the parents I've talked to, that's their position as well. Like, whoa, what part of the game is this? As someone would ask, what part of the game is this? So hopefully
there's a young person's life and livelihood at stake. This is, we're trying to keep kids in school.
Yes.
This young person wants to go to Arts High, and whatever the requirements were to apply to Arts High. And by the way, they do have criteria, because it is a school of visual and performing arts.
Right.
Yes.
So there's something that young person did that was a part of the acceptance process So
Yes,
the parent needs some answers.
absolutely. I'm glad you answered. I'm glad I'm in a space where that question could even be asked. But I'm glad that both of you who have been involved in the school system could do that. So we're going to come to a conclusion, and I guess I'll ask you first, Mr. Jackson, based on your experience as a former board member, what is the best advice you would offer to someone running to serve on the board?
Well, just to answer quickly, I had been involved in education practically my whole life. My grandmother was an educator for 55 years. I had family members who were advocates. So, I grew up
God bless you.
in that field. With that said, I don't want people to think or confuse with what some other board members have done, such as myself and others, who've been active, going to meetings, because becoming an actual board member, there was just so much more, right? At the meetings when, I was the advocate activist, yeah, I had knowledge, but I'm going to be honest with you, I did not know. There was so much
Right.
Robert Rules of Order, 10A, 6A, ethics, legal obligations. There was just so much. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, I don't, it got to a point where I really had to watch what I said in public
Mm-hmm.
because you never know who's listening. You
Right.
never know who's got one of
Absolutely.
these.
That's
Okay.
right.
Because everybody's got one.
Mm-hmm. That's
The
right.
next thing you know, somebody will go to the State Department of Education. Oh, I was in the store with Donald Jackson, and I ran into him. Then I ran into Miss Bassfield, and they said this, and I got it on, and it just, it just was a very an eye opener. So I would tell people who want to be board members, do it for the right reasons. Do it because you have a passion to lead. You have a passion to serve, and remember your ethics and your morals. And that's just with any job or elected position.
Pretty much. That's
Not to
right.
get into specifics, but you might not get paid as a board member, but there are some perks, and some of those perks can lead to and I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to end up on RLS. They can lead to advancements in your personal career. And I could just equate it to pay to play. Stay grounded in morals, stay grounded and obligated to the people who elected you to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Absolutely. And Ms. Bennett, I'll ask you, based on your experience as a principal, what is the best advice you could offer to someone running to serve on the board?
So I agree with Donald, very, very much so. And I'm so proud of him because I've known him from a high school student perspective until now. And I've watched his growth and his understanding broaden, and that, yelling and screaming, there may be a time, but that's not on the Board of Education. You don't come to the board meetings yelling and screaming. I think that it's an honor to serve, but I also think you need to serve knowing that you're going to make sacrifices, give it your best, give it your all, be a sincere, thorough reader, be an excellent listener. And I'm going to take a page from President Obama. I always think of him. I realized as he got through the second half of his first year, I could look at that man and see him thinking before he spoke. And if you think back to his 8 years, you could see him thinking. You could look at his eyes and see him thinking before he spoke, because he knew every word was going to be measured. Now, I'm not equating being a member of the Newark Board of Education with being the President of the United States, but I am equating the responsibility for being true to yourself and careful in your actions, your thoughts, and your expressions, because you want to do good for 38,000 plus students. You want to serve them well, and you do not want to shoot yourself in the foot by tripping yourself up responding too quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one to take with you, because it's not just relegated to serving on the board, but just life in general. You should always think about what you're going to say or what you're going to do.
That's right.
You know, it's extremely important, extremely important. I want to say thank you, Ms. Bennett, and thank you, Mr. Jackson. I think that this has been a pretty successful series. Again, I've learned so much. I plan on voting. I don't have any children in the Newark Public School system. However, I know that it's important for me to wake up and walk across the street and go to that school and vote. It doesn't take but a second. And I'm praying and hoping that, you know, there's a significant difference in how we voted in 2022 as compared to what we do tomorrow in about 11 hours and 8 minutes when the polls open. So thank you both. Again, the election is tomorrow, April the 25th of this year. The polls open at 7 o'clock. And if I am not mistaken, they close at 8. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just it takes 5-10 minutes to participate in the process. And I'm more than sure that the citizens have received information in the mail about who's running. You have a computer in front of you, and if not a computer or a laptop, you have a telephone, and you can find out something about those candidates if you haven't done so already. So I'm hoping that everyone does their due diligence and participate in the process. And thank you again. And we're signing off until the midterm elections, and we might do this again, contingent on how everybody feels about it. Maybe a new moderator, I don't know, you know, but I hope that I did the best that I could. I hope that I asked some of the right questions. I hope that people learned from the questions.
Outstanding job.
Yes.
I asked, yeah, because I learned a lot just asking the questions. So at this point, I conclude and thank you again. Thank you again to my guests.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a good
night,
evening.
everyone.
Good night
You
now.
too.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.